Prevent when you come across a scenario where everything seems either too strange or too complex to understand. Things start to look suspicious over time. Everything around you does not add up, and everything feels unconscious, which leads to a lack of clarity. You begin to self-isolate yourself as a tremor asserting that you are slowly doubting your senses. It seems like you are simply being paranoid. But as time progresses, it feels like the truth is a lot more sinister than it seems. The fears buried in your deepest conscience, structured rage, is not empty. You weren't watching this for some ambiguous reason. Instead, it was meant to be a spectacle for you. What I and most people are oblivious to, the cold hard fact, is too shocking for most of society to accept, which leads to sheltering us from the truth. One man knew the reality, uncovered the secret that was never meant to be known. It was about power, identity, Hollywood, and the forces that sustain reality itself. One day, he just vanished without a trace the moment he tried to speak. One of the biggest names in Hollywood decided to break the rules, which led him to receive America's worst nightmare. He was erased, forced to stand speechless. Nobody knew the existence of such domination over the self. But now, the truth is finally beginning to unfold. Once you comprehend what Mel Gibson uncovered, your perspective on your current reality will irrevocably change. Mel Gibson was untouchable prior to the Passion of the Christ. He was an industry titan, which meant that he was more than just a movie star. He was the all-powerful Hollywood A-lister. But it was as if he vanished after that film because there was no sign of him around. It was as if Hollywood had turned against him and his career was swiftly crumbling, away from the limelight. His reputation was destroyed and he was deemed as insane and controversial. Scandal after scandal came forth to haunt him, shifting the blame to him. Almost as if there was a concerted effort to erase him from public memory and ruin him. But why? The Passion of the Christ is not just a film, it is a supernatural event. Unfiling that movie led to something that Hollywood was not ready for, and Gibson understood that. He understood that, which is the reason he cupped the hand of Jim Caviezel before filming began. He delivered the weighty warning. If you take this role, you will never work in this town again. And indeed, he was correct. What transpired next broke every law of logic and reason, along with unveiling the most secret of secrets. Hollywood actors frequently accept controversial roles without thinking twice. Some of the roles they take include criminals, murderers, or even Satan, yet their careers don't seem to suffer in the slightest. In Gibson's case, however, he didn't just caution Caviezel, he proceeded to give him a very accurate, ominous prophecy stating that you will be erased. Not you will find it tough, or you might struggle. Instead, you will never work in this town again. Why? It wasn't just a movie. It was a test. Indeed, a spiritual encounter disguised under the veil of a Hollywood production. For the better part, Hollywood has managed to get away scot-free, but the next proved beyond doubt that something wasn't quite right. The moment Jim Caviezel put on the costume of Christ, reality began to crumble. The warning signs are rarely ominous. Indeed, during the making of the film, Caviezel was struck twice by lightning, not once. There are some cases when he dislocated his shoulder while marching with the cross. He suffered hypothermia when they tried to shoot the crucifixion scene. His heart ceased to pump and began beating. And that wasn't even the worst of it. A freak accident that involved the actor portraying Judas almost took his life. Crew members began to faint on set. People started listening to voices, feeling something instead. No one human. This was bad luck, defected fate, coincidence, but nothing more. Mel Gibson is aware that it was going to happen. To think that taking up a role so interwoven with the collective consciousness of humanity is merely acting is a mistake. It becomes deeply transformational, and that is when the world around you begins to change. The elite do not want you to know, but here's the kicker. Identity is a wholly subjective and personal concept. And it gets a little more interesting. This is not restricted to Mel Gibson or Jim Caviezel alone. This one is personal. Most people believe that reality is a chain of relationships. You get up, go to work, earn money, and then live as you want to. I know, it may sound strange, but what if I told you that's a false way of examining one's world? What if I told you that the world you stayed in is nothing more than the identity you maintain within your subconscious? Think of it this way. Before the Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel was already on the rise to become a star in Hollywood. His career was unstoppable. Upon assuming the role of Christ, his whole career collapsed. Not because he became a terrible actor, not because Hollywood didn't think of him anymore, but rather had his identity change. He was no more just Jim Caviezel. To millions of people, he was now Christ. And at that point, the world changes. Hollywood could no longer picture him as a leading actor. They looked at him as something very different. His career outlook wiped out completely, which is exactly why Mel Gibson gave him the warning. Once your identity changes, you can't revert back. And this is how it shows up in your life as well. The moment you step into a new version of yourself, the world around you responds, most of the time violently. Have you realized that when you begin to make money, some old friends seem to distance themselves? Or when you are no longer the nice guy, people seem to treat you differently? That is, because identity is reality. Your identity is your reality. And the moment you shift, the entire world has to change along with it. But here's where the story gets even more ridiculous. This is less about you. It is by design. There are people, powerful people, who know this much better than you do. And there is a secret they have used to control human consciousness for centuries. Because if identity is reality, then who is controlling the identities we are allowed to step into? Mel Gibson was not simply making a movie. He was awakening something ancient. And Hollywood knew that. So, this is the reason he was not only criticized, he was exiled. But here's where the story gets more profound. This is not just an attempt to use a psychological trick. It is not about changing one's thought patterns or self-motivation. No, this is ancient knowledge, buried, hidden, and willfully blotted out from the pages of history. Every great civilization, the Egyptians, the mysterious Greeks, the Eastern esotericists, and even the early Christian mystics were aware that reality bends to match the identity you embody. It has nothing to do with thoughts, desires, or hard work. Ancient texts called this the divine self or higher I am, but the elites understood this much earlier and made sure normal people like you never did. Doing so would stop people from being controlled, validated, or told how to identify themselves, leading to real autonomy. Erasing Mel Gibson from the narrative serves the purpose of silencing people who understand and challenge the foundations of reality. It was never about a single controversial movie. It was always about the system. This is why when you start the process of assuming a new role, you get a test to see if you will succeed. That old system is set up in a way that will try to contain you in a locked box as you carry the most manageable, predictable, and subsequently powerless version of yourself. Here is where things get crazy. What happened to Mel Gibson is not just about Hollywood, but something that concerns each and every one of us who has ever tried to escape from our mental shackles. You see, every single one of us is bound to a kind of an identity blueprint, which is an invisible template that controls what you believe, the people you attract, and what reality affords you. But this is the crux of the matter. That script was not written by you. The moment you were born, you were fed and programmed an identity matrix, which stems from your parents and then funnels and amplifies through school, media, culture, and society around you. A role was imposed to you by society. And the scary part is that if that last script isn't consciously rewritten, the individual will remain bound to play the constraints of that imposed role and designed reality. Unfortunately, that reality is devoid of any empowered potential to live your best life. This is why most people remain stagnant. They attempt to make changes in their life but operate from the same identity. The identity of someone who is broke, struggling, and ignored. That is simply an identity. And so long as they identify themselves in that manner, their reality will continue to show it. Because erase the truth they do not want you to know. Your reality does not care about your desires. It only cares about who you are. This is why Mel Gibson got attacked immediately when stepping into an entirely new identity. He wasn't playing the game anymore. He wasn't just an actor, he had become a living symbol that changes human awareness for millennia. And when you do that, when you step into a more developed, more powerful identity, reality shifts to meet that. But reality will test you before it settles around you. This is the point where most people tend to get stuck. It's like they are on the verge of stepping into their power. However, things take a turn for the worse, relationships disengage, wealth starts to vanish, conflict erupts from nowhere, and panic ensues. To put it simply, the phrase, "I must be doing something wrong," rings through their head. Here's the reality. That's how the process unfolds. Evolving is not a linear process. After all, your previous self needs to die in order for the new one to emerge. The reality in which you lived in needs to come crashing down. And this is what will make room for the new ideology. You will never allow yourself to understand this, which means that retreating back to your original form will always be your go-to. Attempting to mend what is shattering instead of comprehending that it is shattering for a purpose, this is what you do. This is why some people never escape the cycle of close to success. They try to adapt to the changes, they face obstacles, attempts fail, and they revert to their previous reality repeatedly. The realization of what is happening is the biggest change anyone can make. Power can be attained without being surrounded by chaos, and this is how to permanently avoid ritualizing recurring pain. In the following paragraph, I will demonstrate exactly how this can be accomplished. Shifting one's identity is mystifying. This creates an entirely new reality. Many believe that reality is set in stone, that events happen randomly, and one's success or failure depends solely on effort, luck, or intellect. However, that's a misconception. Reality does not random. It serves as a reflection. It showcases to you exactly what you believe yourself to be. Not what you wish for, what you hope for, or even what you visualize, but who you truly are. This is the reason two people can possess identical resources, skills, and opportunities, yet one excels while the other remains stuck. That's because it is not about what they do, but who they are. If you do not shift who you are at the core, then nothing changes. This is something Mel Gibson understood in a way that most people won't. When he took on a new identity, the world responded immediately. He no longer lived in a reality that belonged to him, but instead in one that was constructed by something larger than himself. Something that is powerful enough to change consciousness. And this is not only a case pertaining to Hollywood, but a case of you too. Right now, regardless of whether you acknowledge it, you are bound to an identity script. It is possible that you consider yourself a person who has to strive to achieve a goal. Perhaps you think that people like you do not succeed. Perhaps you have crafted a narrative for yourself so long that you do not even think twice about it. Just not lucky enough. I never win. It feels like I have to put in all the effort without being rewarded. And lo and behold, reality continues to validate these claims. Not because it is accurate, but because it is the character you are playing. But here's the secret that changes everything. The script is yours to write. Every person seems to falter at this point. They focus on making a change. They take huge steps and attempt to shift their identity. Everything goes horribly wrong after that. Around them, people seem to treat them differently. Certain friends leave them. They get into unexpected issues. Funds vanish out of nowhere. That causes them to go into a panic. They believe that they are losing. This is the part they never seem to grasp. This is the failure before the breakdown. This is how it is. Reality is built as a closed system. Change does not come in real time. Change is not welcomed. Your current status quo is always reacting upon your old identity. When you try to do anything new, it shatters. The relationships you have built along with the circumstances and the beliefs tend to diverge. Most people seem to back out during that phase. Things start to fall apart around them, and instead of standing their ground, this sense of reality compels them to revert to their old identity. This makes them feel that they rest in their comfort zone. Doing so compels them to reinforce their old reality. These people suppress the same patterns, struggles, and to an extent limits. But those who do succeed, believe me, there is a distinct difference with the rest. These changers get through everything and seem to be doing just fine. They stay intact within the borders. All these other people, they shift and try to change. They don't intervene with the pre-existing reality. They allow it to decay, because they know this is part of the commencement sequence. The world is gauging them, inquiring as to whether or not they are that new person. If the examination is successful, everything crumbling around them does not alter their identity, and at that point, a breakthrough occurs. Reality locks onto the new identity and vice versa. And for some reason, everything starts coming together in ways they never suspected could be possible. This is where those who actually manage to change their lives tremendously differ from those who are unable to break the cycle. Now, here's where I argue 99% of people falter, and why understanding it deeply is so important. Before your new reality solidifies, your new identity needs to be challenged. Ask yourself, if you claim to be a millionaire, but the first time you face a financial crisis you freak out, reverting back to a state of lack, such as the case when a person is in want. You are not a millionaire internally. And if you utter the words, "I am confident and powerful," you shrink into a state of insecurity the moment someone critiques you. Then your new identity did not root itself. Your reality will check to see if you actually mean what you said. And this is where it gets tricky. The test is not a form of punishment or revenge. Rather, it is the last stage of the metamorphosis. Picture this situation similar to updating a computer. After an update, if I don't restart the computer, the old software will still be running in the background. That's what a lot of people miss. They start behaving like their new version, but the moment things get challenging, they go back to their previous default. But the ones who succeed, they pass the test. They don't react. They don't panic. They become steadfast in their self, regardless of the situation. And the moment they do that, there is no choice but to change the reality. Most people never master this because they don't understand that identity shifts are not internal only. It is energetic as well. This explains the resistance felt when people step into a higher self concept. Whether it is becoming wealthy, powerful, successful, or confident, people feel some resistance. It is more than a mental game. It shifts reality. And reality, in return, responds with a test. The test can come in many forms, from people treating you differently because they feel the shift and try to pull you back, to the disappearance of opportunities because your old reality is collapsing and new one is being formed, or other unexpected setbacks. You could be set to step into a new level, and the universe brings a challenge to check if you are ready. Unfortunately, most people break down with, things are falling apart, but in reality they are falling into place. You have not been punished by the universe. Reality is merely reordering itself to fit your new identity. And so the people who do understand this don't react, they exercise restraint. And every piece clicks into place. With this understanding, let me illustrate how to implement it into your life. Regardless of your goal, a certain method exists which, when followed duly, compels reality to shift in tandem with your new self, a 3-step procedure. These guarantees success without relapse into your former self. But prior to explaining that, there's something I need you to do. Consider where in your life reality is challenging you at the present moment. Test. It's not some coincidence. It is appearing as a consequence of your proximity to some change. Your next action, whether you decide to embrace your new identity or fall back into your old self, will dictate your chances of breaking free of constraints or perpetually experiencing stagnation. As you approach the exam, hear this. Step 1. Shift here to activate your identity. The reason most individuals fail is that they ease into it instead of going all in. They take simple actions. They practice stepping into their future selves. This is ineffective. The subconscious doesn't react to change, slow or imposed. It responds to saturation. If you think about it, every substantial change throughout history, personal, social, global, has never taken place over time. It was done through a complete energetic reversal. An energetic shift stamp that irrevocably alters the present moment. This is what you must do to your identity. Step 2. Completely remove your past self. If you are still in the presence of people or places that remind you of your old self, your transition will not succeed. This means no more talking about the old you. Moreover, no more doing things that clash with your new self. No more entities that seeks to build anything in the past. You must ensure that the new identity that your subconscious mind has no chance of denying the flooding. This is not about affirmation and wishful thinking. This is about stuffing the nervous system with one reality. Everything becomes impossible to ignore. Each thought, every action, every micro-decision has to pass through one filter. Would the version of me who already has what I desire think or act this way? If the answer is negative, get rid of it. This is how you close the gap between the past self and future self. You make your future self indisputable. Step 3. Burn the bridges. Where most people fail is leaving an escape route in the uncomfortable scenarios. Do not give other options. Make it so that your previous self is not only useless, but unattainable. When you make this commitment, reality has no other choice but to catch up. This is typically where most people would hesitate. They put themselves in doubt. They cringe when reality pushes back. But the ones who master this, they become unstoppable. Because when you are at a point where your identity is so overwhelmingly strong, reality cannot win. And here is the last truth that nobody wants to talk about. Reality is not something that you sit around waiting for. It's something that you install. It does not happen to you. You place it there. And to make it permanent, the only solution is to ensure that your new self is so embedded that reality has no choice other than to bend itself around you. This level is often hard to reach for many people as they do not understand that to lock in your new identity, it has to be stress tested. Imagine forging steel. If you want sufficient strength, you need heat, pressure, and resistance. This is why when you transition into a higher version of yourself, the world retaliates. It is going to place hurdles in your way, not to shatter you, but to see whether you are serious or not. If you back down, you fail the test. But if you keep the stance, in that case, the reality is locked in. This is why most people are stuck in the cycle of trying, failing, and retreating. They move ahead, encounter resistance, and then immediately return to their original place. But for those who manage to break through the cycle, they comprehend that reasoning as to why there is a need to break the resistance that proves they are indeed following the correct path. This is what accounts for the difference between those that manage to change their life from those that remain stuck in the loop of near success. You need to comprehend this. The test is never the end. The test is the opening to a door. When your world begins to shake, meaning things start to fall apart, don't attempt to solve them. Let them self-destruct, because that self-destruct is not failure. It is the old reality collapsing in order to make space for a new reality. This is where people retreat. But if you hold your ground, if you refuse to break, refuse to go back, refuse to accept anything less than the new you, reality will be forced to align. And when it does, everything changes. The resistance goes away. The fight dissipates. And all at once, the opportunities, the people, and the world that resonates with your new self will start to appear out of nowhere. This is why you alter reality. Not by hoping, not by waiting, but by changing.